Complete tutorial Braided Rug Dollhouse Miniature. Hello everyone, this is artist Pamela T, and today I will be doing a complete tutorial on how to make a braided rug for your dollhouse in 1/12 scale. But before we get into this project, I'd like to share with you this vintage craft book called Needle Craft Projects. It contains patterns and instructions for creating pillows, accessories, wall hangings, bedspreads, and rugs for your dollhouse. So this is the rug that I'm going to be doing the tutorial on today. But before we get into that project, I'd like to share with you the pages within this book. Please feel free to pause the video at any time so that way you can get a good glimpse of the instructions. So let's do a quick flip through of the pages before we get started. Here you can see different projects using counted cross stitch, like rugs, wall hangings, like I said earlier, and these are the patterns here. They give you a full detailed patterns for this book here. And that is a blanket that you can put on your dollhouse bed, as well as a headboard that you can make for your dollhouse. And these are really great patterns, really classic patterns that you can create. It's a really great book to have on hand, and this book was purchased on eBay. So if you're interested in purchasing this book, please check out eBay to see if they have this particular book available. So I find this pattern right here really nice. It's called the Marie Antoinette. It's a really great rug design, and maybe someday I'll make that. But let's get into this project right now. It's this braided rug here that I will be creating for you. And here is the instructions and the materials list. And please feel free to pause this video at any time so that way you can get a glimpse of the instructions. But to simplify it, I will be doing a step-by-step tutorial on how to create this rug, so you can watch this video and learn the techniques, and then you can create your own rug on your own time. Okay, so here are the steps. And it's very easy to do. It just takes a lot of time to create this rug. It's something that you can do like in the evenings while you're watching TV. So let's get into the project here. So here is the yarn that I've chosen, and the yarn is called Camel Rose. And here is the color of the thread, and you can see that it matches the color of the yarn. And I'm just showing you the different types of materials that I use. This is just some embroidery needles and a ruler. Now if you don't have embroidery needles, you can just use a very fine needle, because you don't want to use too large of a needle. So let's get started. So right now I'm just pulling out the yarn, and I will need 15 yards of yarn. So I will need to duplicate that 15 yards of yarn 3 times. And once I've duplicated that yarn 3 times, I will go ahead and combine those 3 strands, and I will do a simple knot at the very end. And here I am giving you an example of how to do that knot. Now I'll just pull it tight. And here I have a clamp that I'm gonna use as a weight to hold down and to roll my completed braid upon as I braid the yarn onto this clamp. So here you can see I'm bringing up the strands of yarn and I'm going to be tying it onto this clamp. The reason why I'm using this clamp is because it's tiny, it's not bulky, but it has weight to it, so feel free to use whatever you have. You can tie it onto your chair or to a doorknob, but here I'm just using this clamp because I can just sit at my desk and do this project. So now I'm tying it onto this clamp. I'm going to secure it tightly with a knot. And when I'm doing this, I'm going to make sure that each strand of yarn is in its proper place. As you can see, you don't want to have any tangles at this point. So now you can see the 3 strands of yarn, and I will be braiding each strand, doing a simple braiding technique to get this braided rug here. So here I am, I'm going to be braiding the yarn, the left over the middle, and now the right over, making sure to keep the braid straight. And I'm going to give you a close-up view of this braiding technique. It's just a simple braid. You want to keep your tension at a medium tension. You don't want to make it too tight or too loose. So now I'm just going to keep on braiding this. So as you can see, this project is just really easy to do. It's just very time consuming, as I said, but it's a really great project to do. So just keep in mind to keep your braid flat and to make sure that your braids are well secured. And I just used my scissors to hold the braid down a bit. And you can see the tension of the braid that I'm creating. It's not too tight, but it's just right. Every now and then you'll want to check your braid and push it down and make it flat. You don't want it to twist or curl or change into a different direction. You want to make sure that it sits flat. So now that my braid is getting a bit long, I will push it up a little bit and hold it with my scissors. Make sure to keep your tension just the right amount, not too loose. Then keep on braiding. Now remember, now you'll have to create 3 strands at 15 yards each. But if you'd like to create a smaller rug, you would make the strands of yarn to your size. So for this rug is a large rug. So depending on the size of rug you need, that's how much yarn you would use. So as my yarn braid got longer, I just tucked it under the clamp and it held it really well because of the weight of the metal. So you can see how far I've gotten here. and how long I have to go to create this braid. And the reason why I chose this yarn here, because the project calls for you to use a variegated yarn, and the variegated yarn is used because it has different colors within it, and it will create a really great color pattern when your rug is complete. So as my braid is getting longer, I've continued to roll the yarn around the clamp. And you can see how far I've gotten so far. So when you're rolling your yarn around your clamp or whatever you're using as a weight, make sure to keep your braids flat against the object that you're rolling your yarn onto. So I'm just continuing to do the same thing. I'm just continuing to braid, make sure my yarn is even throughout. So this is a really great project to do. You can create your own different color patterns. Like if you'd like to do a red and green, that would be great for Christmas. Or if you'd like to do an Easter colors, you could use different color pastel yarns. Would be great. So this color here would be great for a country kitchen. So here you can see later on in the day how much I've gotten done, and I still have quite a way to go. So I've skipped through some parts so that way you can just get the feel of the amount of yarn that I'm braiding. And just keep rolling around the clamp. So if you're wondering where I purchased this clamp from, I got this at my local hardware store. So here I have the end of the yarn strand, and I will finish this off with a knot, and it's just a simple knot that I will be tying at the very end. And I will just snip the little extra pieces of yarn off. And here you can see my full row of yarn that I've braided. And I think this will turn out into a very nice looking rug for the dollhouse. So here is our goal. This is what we want to get to. And here is my needle and my thread. I will be showing you how I thread my needle and how I tie a knot onto my thread. I just gather the thread on one end, a portion of the way, and then twist it a bit, and then what I do is just fold it over and tie a knot at the very end. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this a second time just to make the knot bigger at the end, so that way when I'm pulling the thread through the yarn, it will stay in place and not pull through. So I will snip off the excess, and there you go, there's my thread. So now it is time to create our rug. So I'm going to unroll some of the yarn off of the clamp. And then you're going to measure 2 inches off the end of your yarn. Then you're going to roll it backwards while keeping it flat. You're going to press it down to make sure it's flat all the way through, and then this will be the center core of your braided rug. Now that you have your needle and thread ready, you're going to run it across, as you can see here, and pull the thread through the topmost layers of the yarn. You do not want to sew through to the very bottom. You want to only sew through the very topmost layers of your yarn braid. So the yarn braid that you see here at the very top, this is considered the back side of your rug. Now I will continue to sew on the uppermost parts of the rug. And what we're doing right now is we're joining the 2 pieces of yarn braids together, and this will be the center core of the rug. So it's very good to choose the type of thread color that will match your yarn. So if you're doing a combination of blue variegated yarns, you want to use a blue colored thread that will match your rug. So continue to sew down the 2 inches of length of yarn. So depending upon your needs for your dollhouse, you can create this rug at any size that you need. And make sure that when you're pulling the thread through, you want to make sure that you are pulling it very taut. Make sure that it's nice and tight at the end, so that way the gap between the 2 braids will not show. And here you can see the front of the rug. And there you can see the picture. So now I'm gonna just continue on till the end here. And there is the end of this braid loop. So I'm making sure to tighten the thread really well to close that loop. And here's the front of the rug that is beginning. Now what I'm going to do is just roll it around and then continue on sewing my new braid onto the last braid that I left off. So in this part here, I will also show you how to hide that knot on the end of that braid that we just did. So you can see how it's coming along. It looks really nice. So I'm just gonna continue on here, just sewing these 2 pieces of braid, the new braid with the older braid together. Making sure again to keep your braids flat as you sew. You want to make sure that it's aligned. And now I'm nearing the knot of this braid, and what I want to do is to pull up the little hanging thread and push it down onto the back of this rug, and I'm going to sew through it and up over it. I'm going to sew up over it to cover the ends of this tail, so that way it will secure it. Now that that's secured, I will flatten it down slightly with my hands, and you can see how the rug is beginning to look like. So now I'm just going to continue in the same fashion, just rolling it around, making sure the braids are nice and even and flat. Now when you're sewing your new braid onto your older braid, you want to make sure that you don't pull it too taut or too tight, because what will happen is your rug will begin to curl upwards. So that is why you want to make sure that your braids are always kept flat, and don't sew it too taut or too tight. And make sure not to wind your yarn around too tight, because it will cause your rug to curl up. So here I am. Here's my process so far. And the next morning I started it on again, and this is where I've gotten. And you can see how the variegated yarn really makes a nice pattern for making a miniature braided rug. Now I could have stopped right here. This is a really nice size for a dollhouse, but the project in this book called for 15 yards of 3 strands of yarn. So I'm just going to continue on with my 15 yards of yarn and continue to sew it on to each other. And this is just a simple stitch, as you can see. There's nothing to it. It's just going in, through, and out, pulling it taut onto the newer braid, and making sure to roll your braid around nicely and evenly, making sure to press down your braids flat and making sure that they will sit up next to each other correctly. And here is the progress so far. So for this size here, if you wanted to stop now, this would be a great rug for a kitchen area. Or you could even put it by a dollhouse door entryway. So here's the progress so far. I've continued on a couple of hours later. And you can see the variegation there, and here's the back side, and here is a penny comparison to the rug here. So now I'm going to show you on how to hide those knots. So what you would do is you would tuck it in between, but not push it all the way through to the bottom. You want to just push it slightly in between each braid, so that way the knot will sit between the braids. Making sure not to have the knot come through the front of your rug. So doing this will secure your knot within the two braids, and it will hide your knots from the back side. So here is the front so far. So a couple of hours later, you can see my progress so far and how much I've gotten done. And you can begin to see the different shades of colors, the lights and the darks. And here you can see I've reached the end of the yarn, and I've untied the yarn from the clamp. And now I will be finishing the remainder last parts of the yarn braid. Okay, so now I'm nearing the end of my knot, and I will go ahead and show you how to finish off this rug. I will snip off the little knot at the end. Now to secure the end of this yarn, I will go ahead with my needle or your finger. You can just press down the edges of the yarn, and then what you will do is you will sew up and through, and you see that loop, you will loop it over the ends of your yarn and tuck it under. Now what you will have to do is you will have to keep on doing the same thing until all of your ends are secured and down, so that way any of the edges are not showing. So I still have a bit of the yarn showing through, so I will go ahead and just wound it around, making sure to keep my thread in the uppermost parts of the rug. And you can see how secure it is now. Just keep on looping that thread around the edges of the yarn. So I just have quite a few more stitches to do to finish this rug. So now I'm going to tie a knot to finish this off. And you can see the front of the rug and how it looks now. But right now I will tie a knot. Just a simple knot, just tie up and around and through, and then through the loop, and make it tight. And here is my finished rug for my dollhouse. Now what you'll notice is when you're creating your rug, if you're not pulling it just the right amount, it tends to curl up. So what it suggests in the book, if this happens, the book suggests that you would iron it out or steam it out, but I'm just going to place it on the lowest setting on my iron, and I've used an old t-shirt to cover this piece, and with my lowest setting on, I'm just ironing out the little rug. So the heat of the iron will cause the yarn to lay flat. Continue to iron your rug from the inward out, pressing down lightly. So as you can see, most of the rug has settled down a bit. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going straight onto the rug and I'm ironing it out. Now it doesn't look like it's gonna flatten, but it will eventually. As you keep on ironing it, it'll flatten out and it will sit nicely flat onto your surface. So just make sure to keep it on your lowest setting. For this iron here that I'm using, I've set it at the lowest setting, which is at an acrylic setting. This particular yarn is made from acrylic, 100% acrylic. And now you can see that the rug is beginning to flatten out. So for those stubborn areas, you can just leave the iron on top of it for just a bit longer. Use a nice, light, steady pressure, making sure not to leave the iron on any side of your rug for too long. And here you can see the iron has completely taken out all of the little wrinkles and puffs in the rug. I'm just giving it a one last light run through. And here is the completed rug. You can see all the different variegations in the rug here, and patterns, colors. So this would be great for a living room. You'll have your sofa, your 2 chairs here, and maybe a table here. Thank you very much for watching my video today, and if you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more YouTube videos.